28th, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. And thank you for continuing to put up with our Zoom webinar format. There will be 2 opportunities for public comment tonight. Chair Reddick will facilitate this, and there will be an opportunity for comment on non-agenda items before we get into the agenda for tonight, and an opportunity to comment on the agenda item itself. So if you would like to do that, there is the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen. And if you're calling in, you can press *6 to raise or unraise your hand, and *9 to mute or unmute. There will be a timer. Every speaker will have 3 minutes, and we'll help you move that along. Planning Commission, you did receive a memo for tonight's agenda item. It has been posted on the agenda and is available on the website for everyone to access. And that is it. I see the rest of the people that we needed in the Zoom room, and I'll hand it over to Chair Reddick to officially open the meeting.
Thanks so much. As Brittany said, we're opening this September 28th meeting of the City of Half Moon Bay's Planning Commission. I'd like to start by inviting everyone to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Brittany, would you be able to do the roll call for us, please?
I will go ahead and do that, Chair Reddick.
Sorry,
Brittany's, okay. That's okay. She's doing some other magical things. Commissioner Hernandez.
I am present.
Commissioner Benjamin.
I'm likewise present.
Vice Chair Polgar.
Here.
Chair Reddick.
Here.
Commissioner Gorin has an excused absent tonight. You have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on our agenda is consideration of the minutes of our last meeting, which was September 14th. Do any commissioners have comments or edits to those minutes? Commissioner Benjamin.
Just to say that I'll be abstaining since I was absent from that meeting.
Thank you for that. If no edits or comments, be happy to have a motion to approve the minutes.
Just a comment. I was also absent, so.
I'll move that we approve. I think perhaps we should postpone this motion till the next meeting because we don't have enough aye votes, even if everyone voted aye. So.
Thank you, Winter. That makes sense. So we will not have a motion on the minutes of the last meeting. It brings us to public comment. At this portion of the meeting, as at every Planning Commission meeting, we invite members of the public at this point to make comments to the Commission on any topic other than what appears later in our agenda. So if any members of the public would like to comment, please raise your hand now. And staff will, I think, facilitate the members of the public being able to speak.
This. I do see one hand raised, and I will allow them to talk. I will ask you to unmute, and you should be able to speak now. I'll go ahead.
Yeah, I'm here, Brittany. This is Dave Shore. Before you start running the timer, can you pause the timer, please, so I don't have to talk even faster than usual? And if we can get screen share, I'd like to show you a couple of lovely pictures.
Brittany, we have to promote Mr. Shore to panelist. Are you able to do that? If you can't put him, you can put it back into attendees and I can do it.
I see it here. I see the prompt here.
Okay. I'll start once you are able to share your screen.
I've been promoted. Okay, I see share screen. And I think Not quite sure. Can you see a picture of a green field?
Not yet. You can also email me.
It's a bunch of slides. I don't mean to be taking too much time here. Let me go back to the Zoom webinar and see what prompts I've got. Oh, wait, there's a share button there. I think we got it now, yeah?
I think.
Voila.
Here it is.
Magic. Okay, yeah, it could be anywhere, right? Okay, so if we run a timer, comments tonight on the Hyatt project, comments tonight are not really regarding regulatory or objecting in that way, but more on a practical and realistic basis. This site slopes gently from Main Street towards Highway 1, where there's effectively a berm which creates the wetlands in question. But it's also in an area where the general plane of everything around it is also tilted in that on that access from Main Street towards Highway 1. And we've had a couple of dry winters and it just looks like a barren, it just looks like a field. But if you go back to, as you see the date here, December 16th of 2016, already the basically 60-70% of the parcel was underwater, inundated by that date. And that continued until this is mid-February, where it's still soaking. I will admit to criminal trespass and stomped around the parcel, and it was between 6 and 12 inches of water in a good portion of the darn thing. The water has to go someplace. The Highway 1 keeps it from going someplace. It doesn't infiltrate well. It seems to be kind of a sheet flow situation. And it does raise the issue of when the applicant paves or develops 60% of the parcel with hardscape, what's going to happen to that water? Will other drainage remove water from the designated wetlands? Will this change the patterns? But, I mean, right here, you can't see too well because I'm the world's worst photographer and this is an old iPhone. But there's a heron there who apparently didn't read the wetland delineation map and thought it was a good place to go hunting. This is the northern portion of the parcel, the area that will now be paved. This water has to go someplace. That was a foot deep. That was easily a foot deep. It was overtopping boots. There's our friend the heron again. And here he is again on the northern portion of the field. He thought it was lovely habitat on that day. So it kind of begs the question that the applicant, and here's a lovely bird, but also hunting for food, and those guys were there for days on end. The stormwater management is going to have to be very, very carefully considered here. But I will observe this guy sitting somewhere in the middle of Greg's lobby, and the other one was in room 116 or something, according to the floor plan. The only other thing I would offer tonight is, in light of our governor signing 27 proclamations about affordable housing, it could be that this site would better serve the community if there was low-rise, low-cost, low-income housing here, no higher than, say, 22 feet, which would remove the visual resource impacts and provide significant benefit to the community rather than a profit-driven hotel. Thank you for your time. I will unshare if I can. I'll see what I can do here. Or somebody can unshare me. There we go. Okay.
Thank you for your comments. Do other members of the public have comments on non-agenda items at this point? If so, please raise your hand.
I don't see any other hands raised.
All right, well, I'll close this portion of the public hearing and move to our next agenda item, which is the application for a coastal development permit for the location of 2778 Pullman Avenue. And I believe Mr. Scott Phillips will present the staff report on this. Is that right, Scott?
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair, members of the Planning Commission. Thank you for the introduction. I'll go ahead and screen share and give a brief PowerPoint presentation on the project. As mentioned, this is a proposal includes a new residence at 2778 Pullman Avenue. And the project includes it's a new 2-story house proposed at 4,927 square feet. There's also an attached accessory dwelling unit at 605 square feet. Normal landscaping and site improvements that would normally be associated with a single family residence is also included with the project. And the permits requested include a coastal development permit and architectural review. The site was posted to advertise tonight's meeting. We also published a notice in the newspaper in the Half Moon Bay Review and sent out notices to all the neighbors within 300 feet and then the renters within 100 feet and other normal interested parties. Since this site is within proximity of a scenic corridor, the town boulevard, and adjacent to Broad Ocean viewshed to the south, story poles were installed to reflect the proposed residence and accessory dwelling units. Now, the story poles for the eastern portion of the house were modified before the meeting to reflect the plans that were included with the staff report, which included reducing the height of the snow fencing by 1 foot. So the story poles shown in this photograph on this slide are consistent with the plans that were included with the staff report. Now a little history. The subject property is one of 4 lots that were included with the tentative parcel map that was reviewed and approved back in 2012. The approval was appealed to the California Coastal Commission. And then in 2014, the Coastal Commission found no substantial issue with the appeal that was filed. The final map was subsequently submitted and approved by the city in 2015. And then in 2018, a land use of plan amendment was certified by the Coastal Commission acknowledging the Stolowski-Gonzalez planned unit development. Now, this particular parcel has historically been used for industrial storage, but all the industrial equipment was removed by 2018. This slide shows the site and surrounding area on an aerial photograph. And the project site is at the southern end of Pullman Avenue and is one of 2 lots that are accessible by the new cul-de-sac that was recently constructed. The site is zoned planned unit development, but the land use designation was recently changed during the land use plan update to residential low density. The site is within a proximity of a scenic corridor, as I mentioned earlier, the town boulevard, and then adjacent to Broad Ocean, the Broad Ocean viewshed to the south. Now, some key considerations for the Planning Commission to consider: compliance with the development standards that have been adopted, design compatibility, coastal resource conservation standards, as well as visual resource standards, and then adequacy of the CEQA document. I'll go into the plans briefly before touching upon those items. This slide includes the proposed site plan that includes the building footprint for the main house, garage in the middle, and then accessory dwelling unit off to the right. And then also the Pullman watercourse is shown in blue along the top there. And here's the proposed front elevation that for the most part faces the Pullman cul-de-sac. The elevation on the bottom, lower right, actually faces more of the Pullman drainage. And then on the other side, this is the rear elevation, and then the one on the lower left predominantly faces the residence to the west. Here is a photographic rendering of the proposed house and ADU, and then a photograph of the existing site for the most part. I tried to line it up as perfect as I can. I got it a little bit off, but And then exterior colors and materials. Vertical siding would be painted in more of a gray, which is a color that the Architectural Advisory Committee recommended. And then on the lower area, a rock facade, similar but not matching the house that was recently constructed to the west. Very similar colors and materials as the neighboring house to the west, but slightly different. And this slide includes the first floor plan, which includes the accessory dwelling unit, the 2-car garage, and then the lower level of the main house. And then the second floor that includes 3 bedrooms and a master bathroom. You can also see the solar system that's been sited on the roof of the garage and accessory dwelling units. Section of the house, the top ridge of the 2-story portion is at 25 feet, 10 inches. And then not shown on this section, the single-story portion of the accessory dwelling unit is just under 15 feet from existing grade. Now, speaking of grading and drainage, a detailed grading and drainage plan was included with the plan set. And the detention basin has been sited in the lower portion of the site towards the back of the residence. And then also included is importing of roughly 330 cubic yards of fill, which is proposed to be deposited for the most part in the area of the new accessory dwelling unit and garage and surrounding area. And now we did receive an inquiry from one of the commissioners about the purpose of this fill. We reached out to the applicant. They provided a memo from their civil engineer with feedback on the fill. And the main purpose of it is to help with the drainage for the new house. So this slide includes the proposed landscape plan, and which includes a drought-tolerant plant palette, as well as raised beds in the backyard. A split rail fence has been shown along the riparian buffer edge. And in between the Pullman watercourse and the split rail fence, no new landscaping is proposed, but there are some existing cypress trees planted in that area. There would also be 4 additional cypress trees planted in between the 2-story portion of the house and the neighboring house to the west to provide some screening and some landscape buffer. Now, as far as design compatibility, this project was reviewed by the Architectural Advisory Committee on 2 separate occasions. On the first visit to the AAC recommended switching the location of the 2-story portion of the house and the single-story to what is proposed this evening. On the second, so the design was modified and then brought back to the AAC. And the second review, the AAC for the most part was supportive of the design that is currently under review by the commission this evening. One of our commissioners did still favor the old design over this one, but the consensus was this design was favorable, especially in regard to the views from the Cabrillo Highway. Now, as far as conformance with the planned unit development standards, the proposed project does meet the building envelope and setbacks identified in the final map or the tentative map. The development standards have a limitation on lot coverage of 6,000 square feet. Now, this project includes a footprint of 4,302 square feet, which is well underneath the 6,000 maximum. 2-car garage and 2 additional spaces are required, which the proposal does meet. Now, we also received some inquiries from the commission, and we also received a late email from coastal staff about ocean views from Cabrillo Highway. The key policy within our land use plan that is noted in the staff report is 916 related to broad ocean views. And this is consistent with the zoning code section 1837-030 that talks about broad ocean views and limiting new buildings to a maximum height of 15 feet. While we were drafting the staff report, we did catch a slight inconsistency on height of the single story portion of the house, in that the house was measured from proposed grade. That change was made. That portion of the house was dropped by a foot, and then story poles were modified accordingly. Now, just to illustrate the figure 9.1 in our land use plan, to show you about the broad ocean view shed to the south. I tried to indicate the subject property in orange here to show that it's not necessarily in the broad ocean view shed, but adjacent to, and views towards the broad ocean view go across the subject property. Now, you probably noticed in the staff report that there was some discussion about the site being previously used as industrial storage, and the soil analysis that's taken place in the past. There was a phase 1 environmental assessment done during the tentative parcel map and included with the initial study. The conclusions from that report was that there needed to be some soil export that where oil deposits had taken place. That was completed. We also required follow-up testing just to make for certain that the site is appropriate for residential use. And the conclusions from the follow-up testing was, yes, the site is okay, that there isn't any toxic condition that was identified within the testing, and our engineering staff reviewed the testing in detail and confirmed that there is no toxic condition on the site that would create an unsafe condition for folks living there in the future. Now, as far as the CEQA analysis, initial study was prepared with the tentative parcel map, primarily due to recommendations from the biologist, mitigation measures that were then included in the mitigated negative declaration related to biological resources. Once this application was submitted for the new house, we did ask a bioresource evaluation was again prepared an update just to confirm or see if any changes had taken place in the site since the original one. The biologist concluded that the mitigation measures that were adopted with the tentative parcel map were appropriate for the new house. And so you probably noticed that we did reference the conditions of approval that included the mitigation measures from the tentative parcel map. So that's about all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions. We did distribute a memorandum this afternoon that provided some answers to some of the questions that came up and some background information. The owner and applicant is also logged in this evening, as well as his design team. They would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Scott. Excuse me. I'll turn to commissioners for any clarifying questions. Commissioner Benjamin.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Scott. I was just looking back at some of the Google Earth photographs in this area from 2017, and I noticed that some of the site and adjoining parcel have disappeared. it sounds like our conditions are that we're keeping the cypress trees adjacent to the drainage. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. There is no proposal to remove the cypress trees that are on the subject property.
And we have an enforceable condition in that area, so that if there's an error there, we have the basis to insist on a correction or a restoration.
Yes, I can verify that there is a condition on that. So for tree protection.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Hernandez, did I see your hand up?
Yes, albeit briefly. Scott, thank you for the report. Thank you for your memo today, both very thoughtful. Just want to, as I look at this project, I'm reminded of a project downstream on the same water course, 2800 I can never get this name straight, so Champs-Élysées, I'll call it. I'm not a French speaker. That project, I recall we had some concerns about water. Now I think the difference between that project and this project is that project has a basement. This project has no basement. But can you just walk me through any concerns around the water, the drainage on the site, any issues around that? And again, we're thinking bigger picture. If we look at all of the development in the nearby area, just help me understand the framework that you and the city are thinking about this development in light of some of the extra efforts we're putting through on that other project.
Yes, and there is a difference between this proposal and the neighboring proposal downstream. Predominantly fill associated with this proposal, whereas the previous proposal, like you mentioned, included a basement and actually excavating the site some. So that does affect the drainage that would drainage management on the site. This may be a good question for the project civil engineer to provide some clarity on, and the sort of the analysis that he did to come up with a drainage plan and the fill that's included with the proposal.
If you think it's constructive, we could ask him to speak to that now.
Okay. Brittany, do you happen to see Charlie Kissick logged in this evening?
Builders, I see Carrie Burke's hand raised.
Okay.
We'll allow her to talk.
Okay.
Just through the chair, Jonathan Wu, the city's assistant engineer, is also available to clarify anything for the city about drainage and grading.
Okay. Would you like us to start with Jonathan, Jill? What's your pleasure?
Oh, I just want to make sure you know your resources, and I suspect there'll be more questions as we go, so we can queue them up. That's all.
Okay.
Carrie, you should unmute yourself and.
Okay. Excuse me, Commissioner Hernandez has a comment.
Yeah, my question was really more directed at the city versus the applicant. Happy to hear the applicant's position, but if the city can provide some context for me on this project versus the other project, that's really what I was looking for. I'm just thinking big picture about the development we have in this area.
Yeah, a good question.
Okay, I just brought Jonathan Wu over. Let's see if he can chime in.
Through the chair.
Yes, Commissioner Benjamin.
Thank you. Just since the applicant's civil is preparing to speak, maybe I'll just line up my question adjacent to Rick's. I was the commissioner who posed the inquiry about how the fill was going to work out. My concern here is I appreciate the note that says it's about drainage, and I just would like to get a little bit deeper than that. Because I don't, sooner or later, when you add a structure, there's some sapping, there's some change in the behavior of the soil in the presence of water running. And I want to try to get a bigger picture of how they envision that interface working over time. and what we need to have in place in order to make sure it doesn't have an adverse impact on this home, but also on the neighbor's home and the environment in that area. Thank you.
Yeah, understood.
Sorry to pile on, but through the chair. So I have kind of in tandem with that, also my clarifying question may be relevant to this as well, in that in looking at the plan for the landscape plane, a large area, it looked to me, around the house itself is proposed for decomposed, I might have said that wrong, granite. And so not mulching or plantings or anything like that. And so I want to understand kind of the vision of how that will persist or function over time along with the drainage. It was something that I didn't understand or hadn't seen before necessarily in a proposal for a residential development.
Well, good questions. Perhaps there's room for us to hear the views of both Jonathan and the applicant's design team that will help answer these clarifying questions.
Good evening, Commission. I'll do my best to try to answer those excellent questions that you all proposed. So I just a fair warning. I entered the city not really viewing this set of plans as much, so I took a quick look at it prior to the meeting. From my understanding, the drainage is directed towards the back of the property, away from the drainage ditch. And I understand that the questions of the soil underneath, which will be, I believe, have a geotechnical report down the line. There has been a geotechnical report from phase 1, as Scott mentioned, during the tentative map. And from that was from Sigma Prime. And I believe that was just a soil report rather than a toxicity report. So from that knowledge from Sigma Prime, we have some confidence stating that this soil is okay to build on. I might have missed some questions, and my apologies about that. But if I did, please go ahead and let me know of those questions again, please.
Commissioner Hernandez, maybe you'd like to briefly restate your question that started this.
I apologize. I'm having a disruption at the moment. I'll be here.
Okay.
I'll be glad to step in, Chair.
Yes, thanks.
So welcome, Jonathan, and thank you for stepping in. I understand that this is something that you haven't spent a lot of time with yet. So speed is the byproduct of accuracy. So please don't feel rushed. If you need more information, let's get it. So my questions had to do, I appreciate that the idea is that the directed to the back of the property. Over time, we're going to see surface flows that are going to change the way that the soils are structured. I believe that is sapping. It's an early stage of gully formation. And I'm not implying that a gully will happen in 5 years or anything, but it's a change in the way that the land is structured. And when we bring in this much fill, it's going to change the way that works. And I understand from the applicant's letter that the purpose of it is to protect this house, to move the water away from this house. The focus of my question is how will that affect the adjacent properties? And I didn't feel like the letter that I read really addressed that question.
Okay, thanks for the clarification on that.
Sure.
On your question, Commissioner Benjamin. That's a really great question that I'm not too sure of at this moment. I'll definitely have to think a little bit more into that. You know, down the line, of course, you know, surface runoff would flow outside of the property, but then again, it does percolate into the soil. So not necessarily it's going to form, say like a channel 10, 30, 50 years down the line. So it will percolate and it won't, you know, go into a certain location. Does that, I don't think that answers your question though.
You're on mute.
You're muted, Jimmy.
I apologize. Thank you. I appreciate the answer. This isn't I don't actually get to make an assessment during this question period. I appreciate your telling me what you know. I feel like it does leave me with more questions, but that's probably all I should say right now. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Thank you. So we just want to be clear that this kind of a drainage and grading plan would have quite a bit more rigorous review as it goes through the building and construction permit review process. I think it would be appropriate at this point to let the applicant's engineer address you within the realm of your clarifying questions. I think the question is about what is the concept and what is the intention for the fill and how is this drainage plan supposed to work? And I think that that's a fair thing to ask for them to clarify, and then we can provide some more responses later.
That would be helpful, Chair. I also think that based on that, there's a follow-on question about whether we have the right conditions in the permit to ensure that the stated behavior is going to be achieved.
Yes, that makes sense. Jill, let's hear from the applicant.
That's fine. We want to remind everybody to try to stay with clarifying questions. That might have crossed right a little teeny bit into deliberation, and we know that it's so hard to know where that line is, but.
Yeah, I didn't mean to suggest that they aren't there. I just, to be honest, I don't know. I won't know until I hear.
Carrie, you should be able to unmute.
Good evening, everyone. This is Carrie Burke, and unfortunately, our civil engineer is not with us tonight. However, the landowner, Mark Skoloski, and also who is a grading contractor and very familiar with our drainage plan and had the meeting with Charlie Kissick today, will make some comments regarding the purpose and of the fill, the fact that the detention basin has been adequately sized, and also Charlie Kissick is a registered hydrogeologist, and so he is very familiar in preparing these plans, and it was confident that this plan will work, and it has been reviewed, initially by your Public Works Department and was satisfactory. And with that, here's Mark.
Hello, Commission. This is Mark Stolowski. Here to talk about your concerns. First off, I want everybody to remember the size of this lot. We're talking a lot that's 18,000 plus square feet, the size of 3 or 4 lots in City of Half Moon Bay. And we're talking approximately 300 yards of fill, which realistically would spread maybe 6 inches, 8 inches of dirt over the lot, maybe not even that much. Most of the fill, which is about 1 foot in thickness, is on, I'm calling it the east side of the parcel under the ADU in the garage. Just because that property there is relatively flat right now. And if we built it, the garage would get flooded. So we're raising it up about 8 or 10 inches above original grade, getting slope to the south, and it's probably sloping at about 1%, 1.25%. So far as runoff and that, it's not going to be a stream. It's just the water is going to meander to the south to our sediment basin. And then it's going to do its thing in the sediment basin like it's designed to do. All the property to the west is pretty much staying original grade, and that's all designed to go to the sediment basin. We have to raise the garage up a little bit, otherwise the garage would get flooded. The garage is, I believe, 18 inches below the house, 6 inches below the ADU unit. So, I mean, everybody knows that you can't have a house and garage the same underwater. It just doesn't work. We kept the fill as low as we can so we could keep the height as low as we can. And I believe we're in compliance everywhere as far as height restrictions and all that stuff. The grading is all designed to grade to sheet grade or sheet drain, as we call it in the industry. Very gentle slope to the detention basin. If anybody has any other questions about the drainage, I'll be glad to answer those.
Commissioner Hernandez?
As an expert in grading, which I am not, do you foresee any impact downstream to any of the other houses or projects in a material way?
No. I'm assuming you could hear me. I didn't push any.
Yes.
We hear you.
No, we're grading, the water is sheet flowing to Newing Avenue, which is a paper street owned by the city. And that property drains naturally to the ocean. And it's a gentle slope, and it's been draining there for 100 years that way. I know because I live right next to it. And after that, it goes out into what is called Surf Beach. And it's all a gentle slope, all draining to the west. And water does not run fast. It's not going to erode. It just meanders all the way down to the ocean. And there's no way the water could get to Pullman Ditch because Pullman Ditch is higher in elevation.
Well, thank you for that. I think those are helpful answers. Vice Chair Polgar.
Thank you very much for the information about the grading plan. Could you comment on the plan for in the landscaping with the decomposed granite that's proposed for what looks like a large area of the surrounding landscaping? And then just also when you say, and I probably should know this, but when you say turf, is that meaning irrigated or is that artificial turf?
Mark, you'll need to unmute.
I'll start with the decomposed granite. Coast County Water has some requirements on our landscape plan, and we need to comply to them. We do have an 18,000 square foot lot, so we're limited to the amount of water usage we can for landscaping, and that's why we went with a lot of decomposed granite. Decomposed granite is permeable, and the water soaks in, and we achieved two different things with that. We got permeable, water goes into the ground, and we're not watering plants and not using CCWD water. And as far as the turf, there's a small amount of turf that we're going to put in, and it's going to be synthetic turf. We will not be able to get enough water for a regular grass.
And just a follow-up question through the chair. Am I to understand that the decomposed granite is kind of a compacted, almost like some where you see trails that are made out of that? Is that how it's proposed?
Yes, decomposed granite is compacted and you can walk on it and it's permeable.
Thank you.
Scott, I have a clarifying question for you. In your memo this afternoon, you wrote an explanation of the passage in the staff report that says, under the Coastal Act, the city is bound by that decision for future actions regarding the subdivision and PUD plan. And I'm hoping, if you don't mind, could you just summarize that so we have it in plainly in the meeting record here?
Yes, certainly. So what's been explained to me, and maybe Winter, you can back me up on this. We certainly have to acknowledge the decisions that were made by our city council and coastal commission in the past, but that doesn't necessarily, a coastal development permit is still required for the vertical construction that it's included in the proposal this evening. So.
Through the chair, I'm happy to augment that just a little bit. Basically, that provision of the Coastal Act just says that, in a case like this where there's been an appeal to the Coastal Commission and the Coastal Commission has issued a decision, that decision shall guide the local government in future actions taken under the Coastal Act. And here I think that's primarily relevant to any discussion about the watercourse. And in the original appeal, that subdivision proposed to put a culvert in, and then the project was changed, and the commission basically gave its stamp of approval to not having a culvert. So I think that for purposes of our discussion tonight and on the project, it has a pretty narrow application to that culvert issue.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, that is helpful. Do commissioners?
I just want to note one more thing on that. I do think they didn't take up the project for any other substantive issue. There were some other grounds for that appeal, and so those also were not brought forward. That said, the city's approval then stood, which is where that CEQA document came from, and the PUD plan that we've used in the zoning analysis it is what was approved for this. So I hope that helps.
That's very helpful to me. Thank you. Do commissioners have any further clarifying questions? Well, seeing none, I will open the public hearing and invite members of the public who wish to comment on this agenda item to please raise your hand, and staff will facilitate you being able to speak.
Not seeing any hands raised yet.
So just to be clear, if you want to address the Planning Commission on this application for this permit, now is the time to raise your hand and do so.
I see the applicant has raised their hand again.
Okay.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Okay, here you go.
Time the applicant.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, this is Mark Stolowski.
Yeah,
and I'd like to talk to say a few words to the commission. I I've owned this property for 35 years with my business partner, Robert Gonzalez. We appreciate Scott Phillips and Jill Ekus, all the work that they've done trying to help us develop this and go through the process. As the staff report indicates, we have been working on this house design for over 2 years to satisfy concerns, the architectural review, and the planning staff. The resulting project is consistent with recently adopted land use plans and zoning standards. You know, we support the staff's recommendation and project conditions in all the staff reports. I understand that folks are concerned about the Pullman ditch. To be clear, the ditch is not on our property and no alternations will be made to the ditch as part of this project. I am offering to have the final approval letter and project conditions recorded on the parcel deed prior to assurance of an occupancy permit to provide clear understanding of the buffer and protection requirements for future owners of this project. With me tonight is my business partner, Robert, and Carrie Burke, who assist with the subdivision. Any concerns about the design, our architect, Lisa Wellman, is on board, and the builder, Jason Fitzsimons, could answer any questions pertaining to the building design. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Stolowski. Any other members of the public attending wish to address the commission, please raise your hand. All right, well, going once, going twice, I'll close the public hearing and invite commissioners to deliberate on this application. Commissioner Benjamin, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Ruddick. So I appreciated the comments of the applicant with respect to clarifying for future landowners their responsibilities with respect to this this water course. And I would like to ask staff if we have that condition included, that recordation.
No, and it's, you know, we did discuss that with the applicant, and you know, we're happy to record the conditions of approval. I've seen that done in other cities before. Hasn't been our normal practice here in Half Moon Bay, but it's certainly something that we could, you know, do if the commission feels that would be appropriate. So,
personally, I think it would be appropriate. I see some thumbs. Maybe the other commissioners will want to speak to that. I also I applaud the protection of those cypress trees. I think they'll do a lot to stabilize the side of the drainage, and that's great. I will confess I remain somewhat uncomfortable with the amount of fill, not so much because I think that there's something nefarious going on. I think I understand what the applicant said about creating a level grade, and I appreciate what our engineer said. I feel like water has a way of achieving its own ends. And if they haven't been very carefully examined, sometimes they can kind of bite you in uncomfortable places. So I'm a little uncomfortable with that, given the volume of the parcel if it were a smaller parcel, but recognizing that the adjacent area is a PUD, and the impacts that are, if water does run off into that area, it might provide some different kind of consequences in that area. So I'm open to it. I just wanted to understand it. I think I'm going to be okay with that. I would like to take issue with the assessment of the visual resource impact of that one-story wing. And I think that while the picture in the initial staff report didn't really show it, the pictures that Scott's memo of this evening published, and I think he flipped through a couple of them, really captured it made it pretty clear that even with the story poles being lowered a little bit, it's still capturing ocean views and eliminating them. I appreciate staff's pointing out the visual resources map, figure 9.1, and citing a couple of the relevant policies. One that I think is important to acknowledge. Yeah, this is not the picture I want. I want the one from your memo published this evening, please. So if you could go to that, and you'll see those pictures where you can see the story pole, and it's obstructing not just the beach, but also the ocean. And I just want to point out that one of the policies that we definitely should be considering that wasn't mentioned, I think, in the summary, is 9.1, which says that the scenic resources and scenic corridors include, but are not limited to those things in figure 9-1. So I don't feel bound by the fact that we have these perpendicular lines. There's no question in my mind that this is a broad ocean view, and a plain reading of the policy doesn't say to me that it's okay for us to take off a little slice, and because it's a small slice of a broad view, it's okay. To me, that's the equivalent of the beginning of selling a bologna one slice at a time. There are some others that I think make it even clearer. But the idea here is that this is not a fatal flaw in the design. Some of the later pictures, Scott, I think might have shown it a little clearly, but yeah, you'll get it. I think this could be resolved by lowering that a little bit so you're not over the water. Or, this is a fairly large house. It wouldn't, reining in the footprint wouldn't be the end of the world. But to me, lowering the height of that is going to be sufficient. So those are my comments on the project. Obviously it's a beautiful home. I certainly appreciate the challenges that this project has had. The applicant has come a long way. And I think these are issues of policy. They're certainly not in any way directed towards the applicant. They're directed toward the project. But I think they're important. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hernandez, please.
Let me take myself off mute. So where do I start? So first of all, the project itself, I looked at the design, and I'm aware of some other projects in the area and how this might fit in. I actually think this is a pretty good design on the whole. I mean, it fits into the community, consistent style, aesthetically it's pleasing, and agree with the general findings of the Architectural Review Committee. So I'm pleased with the aesthetics of the project from the responsibility we have from an art perspective. The question about, is it a material impact to a visual resource? I mean, we got some things like telephone poles, trees. When you're looking at the crown, when you're on the crown of Highway 1 looking west, I don't think this makes a material impact to broad ocean views. It's an impacted ocean view from my perspective and my reading of the city's guidelines on all of this. So I don't think we're materially changing a broad ocean view. So I'm not as concerned about this as perhaps Commissioner Benjamin is. And I do, again, support the condition of approval as proposed by the applicant. And I think that, when the applicant's willing to make sure we're doing the right thing the right way, and they're willing to write that into the long-term obligations of future property owners, I'm always happy to go with that. So I appreciate the applicant's willingness to think long-term and making sure that we're taking care of future obligations we have. The only concern I have here is just making sure that, as Commissioner Benjamin and Commissioner Polgar have been poking around on, is making sure we're dealing with water the right way and making sure that we're thinking through this carefully. This is an area that gets a little wet. I'm not an expert on water by any means, but some people would say, some lay people would say this area floods, and we've had some issues there. So I just want to make sure that any of the changes we're making aren't materially impacting people downstream, and that as long as the city's engineering team has done their due diligence and we know that we're doing the right thing the right way and we're following due process, I'm supportive of this project, and I don't have any further questions or issues with it.
Thank you, Commissioner Hernandez. Vice Chair Polgar, please.
Thank you. Yes, I like Commissioners Hernandez and Benjamin. I also find a lot to like about this the proposed project. I think the design is very, very good, and I appreciate the offer to with the recording the conditions for future landowners or of the property. I think that's really do appreciate that, and I think that's a very good thing to pursue. I'm a little concerned about the drainage, although I think I understand a little bit better the plan. Obviously, I'm assuming that with the having engineering geotech analysis, I'm assuming that things like the compaction will be have to go through approval, et cetera, for the placement of this fill. And that they will be able to obviously do the proper sloping as they've laid out or described. So I'm not tremendously concerned. I guess I would echo Commissioner Hernandez's comments along those lines. As long as there can be the assurances for that, then I'm fine with that. I do have, I don't think that while this may be this project may be just outside of the broad ocean views corridor or shaded area, I do think though it is certainly needs to meet the policy 910 from the 912 from the land use plan, the scenic corridor, Town Boulevard scenic corridor. And I, like Commissioner Benjamin, don't see that it's met that yet. I think that, like he said, it's really a matter of, it could be by lowering it. And in fact, I mean, the current building in front, that's the existing building, it's lower and it doesn't block, you can tell that it doesn't block the, I know it's not going to stay there, but that's, I guess that's an example of where it's a matter of lowering it, and it could meet that requirement, or like Commissioner Benjamin pointed out, could be a matter of reining in the size of it if that isn't an option to lower it. So it's just that I don't see that it's met that. Or that I feel like I'm looking at that and I see all the pictures and I'm seeing that it does, unfortunately, still, even with the lowered height with the more recent story poles, still is an issue and not really meeting that policy 912 at this point. So those are my thoughts at this point.
Thank you for that. this I'd like to echo my colleagues in thanking the applicant and city staff for working so long and hard on this. I think it's obviously very close to being a good project. I'm sensitive to the comments made by all three of my colleagues now about the concerns of a little bit of loss of the ocean views. I think at this point in time, I align with Commissioner Hernandez in thinking that this design, I could support it. And the reason for that mainly is that the improvement to the preserving the ocean views that comes from flip-flopping the house and the garage is substantial, so that when you're south and generally when you're east of the proposed project, the massing relative to the existing neighborhood houses is such that there's very little intrusion. But Commissioners Benjamin and Vice Chair Polgar are correct. There's not, you can't say there's zero blockage of that ocean view. So that I'm sharing my thought process as we go along. Commissioner Hernandez, oh no, you took your hand down, or if your hand is up, go ahead.
No, I'm looking at Google Street View, and I wonder, I mean, the view that's in Scott's letter from tonight, I think, Jimmy, to your point, it looks impactful. I'm not sure where that photo was taken. When I look at Google Street View, I see a strange tree and a lot in front of the project site. Yeah, exactly. If you go a little to the north on Google Street View, there's a tree to the left of where this telephone pole is. And I mean, you've got an angle of the view of this project. And so I'm looking at where that telephone pole is on my view of Google Street View from Highway 1. And, you know, look, there's another project that's proposed here, you know, which is probably more impactful. I look at the tree line. I don't know. I don't see this being a broad ocean view because there's a fence, 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 there's some utility lines, there's some house, there's some trees. This does not satisfy my definition of but there's a house to the left. This doesn't satisfy the definition of a broad ocean view. And so I get concerned. I agree, we need to protect broad ocean views. And in my observation and having crafted our current LUP, I don't view this as a broad ocean view from Highway 1. And so happy to have that discussion here, but this is not a broad ocean view.
Thanks for that. Commissioner Benjamin, please. You're on mute, Jimmy.
Thank you. You can hear me now, I bet. So I appreciate Rick's comments. He's right. We were the LUP subcommittee for the land use plan subcommittee for the LCB, but everybody was in it and the Coastal Commission has certified it. I think that there are elements of subjectivity involved. I mean, that's part of our job, is to interpret these policies. I would say, to me, it looks like a scenic corridor. Rick may not see it as a scenic corridor, and I can respect that that's a different perspective that a person could have. Objectively, it's covering the water. I think that the parcel in front at some point is going to have some kind of development on it. It could be masked in a way that it doesn't have to run over the area that would be impacted by this. Let me turn back to the design. One of the questions I asked staff was I noticed plans that there was a crawl space under this home. It wasn't on a slab. And maybe that's not the case in that West Wing area. Maybe, Scott, you can remind me, is this area got a crawl space under it?
Yes, that's correct. For the most part, most of the house does have a form foundation with a crawl space.
So you know where I'm going with that.
The exception to that would be the garage. The garage does have a slab. So
if we didn't have the elevation for the crawl space and it was sitting at a slab at a slightly lower grade, maybe with less fill, would we be able to get below that ocean view?
Well, I think that would be a good question for the design team, that they would be able to give a more quantitative answer. Okay, I didn't mean to badge you, I'm sorry. And while that's going on, let me just pose a question to Winter. And that is, we have the applicant's offer to record. Is there something substantive that we could take action on tonight that achieve that would implement that? Is there some language that you've reviewed? I don't want to make you, craft language on the fly if it isn't there.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'm happy to respond. I did want to note that the conditions of approval for a CDP are automatically by law binding on successors and interest. So that's why, and we have a condition in all of the CDPs that says that, but that's just a statement of the law. That said, I have no objection to, kind of belts and suspenders if the applicant is willing to also record the conditions against the property. And I think it would not be a hard condition to draft, as I think Scott was mentioning. Other jurisdictions do this from time to time. So I think if you wanted to, if there was a motion to approve the project with the modification that we insert a condition requiring the applicant to record the conditions, that would be pretty straightforward to develop after the fact.
Okay, thank
Understood.
you. Yeah. So I remain. I'm trying to see it your way, Rick. I'm struggling to do so. I think West Ocean View, it is certainly a scenic corridor. I agree that there are interruptions. I think those interruptions, like the telephone pole, maybe would get relocated with development, or maybe not if the development is massed differently. The tree might come down that you were talking about. It's not like we haven't had, that is an isolated tree. I think it's a uke, actually. I can't make it out too well.
I mean, if I have this lot correct, through the chair, sorry, Jimmy, I interrupted you. Apologize.
You're good.
I mean, if I have this lot correct, I mean, this is where they sell Christmas trees, right? I mean, and it's honestly, it's a pretty trashy view from the crown of the street today. So I don't think we're materially impacting things. And again, if I go 200 yards to the south, fundamentally completely different thing. Like 200 yards to the south, it is a broad ocean view, clear line of sight from the crown of the street to the ocean with nothing obstructing it except for a few trees which could come down. And that's kind of the point here, is that this is not what we fight about with the Coastal Act. This is an unimpressive view of a, frankly, a really trashy lot on the closest to Highway 1, and then, there's another house there. I think 200 yards to the south, it's a completely different issue when we talk about scenic corridor, broad ocean views. So I view both of those things as an and statement, not an or statement. And I look at them as the collective value that we see from Highway 1.
I will, I'll just by it. I wasn't on the Crown. I was actually on the Naomi Patridge Trail. So I might have seen a little bit higher than you, but my sense from your comment is it could be substantially higher and it wouldn't change your thinking about this because it's the context that is in front of what's being blocked and south of what's being blocked that is driving your framing of your position, if I understand.
The view's already obstructed. Yeah, that's exactly my point, Commissioner Benjamin, is that the view's already obstructed. It's not a broad ocean view.
Yeah, we have to agree to disagree, but I thank you. I think we've come as close as we probably, I think that picture says a lot got up there right now. Back up one, please. The photograph, please.
I think Commissioner Benjamin's looking for the photograph that we were
It
just
was
seeing.
just up before the plan went up.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's to me, this describes a visual resource the way Bolsa Chica describes a wetland. It can be degraded, but it's still a wetland. To me, this is a visual resource and it's worth preserving. Thank you.
Vice Chair Polgar, please.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Hernandez that it's not a broad ocean view, but it is a view, and I guess I hear you. Although I'll be honest, maybe I spent too much time in Maine in the summer, and to me this is attractive once all the snow melts. But a lot of these things are transit, like they may change. But once that house is built there, the view is gone. And so we're like nothing else. Yes, the pole is in the way of a portion of it. And, you know, maybe there's a part that subjectively the attractiveness of this view is not great or whatever, depending on your opinion. But the reality is the only thing that's in this that would block the view of the ocean is the proposed structure. Whether or not you think it looks good or better than what's already there, that's where I come down on it. Is I'm like, once it's approved, it's I don't see that's the one thing that I don't see changing. And so that's where I'm coming down, that I don't see. It's not that I'm not arguing about I'm not on board. Like, I don't think it's a broad ocean view under policy 916. I'm just saying under policy 912, we also are supposed to be protecting views along a scenic corridor. And just because it happens to be next to an area that is a broad ocean view that is pretty awesome, you know, I agree. I've gone down further south, you know, doesn't mean that like, it's kind of like then you're saying, well, we won't protect this one just because it's next to a good one. And so I don't understand, like, that's where I'm coming down as an issue for me. And the other thing is that in my understanding of the original analysis, like we talked, you know, there's this comment about how there'll be other development there, but we have nothing to look at, like the CEQA MND, ISMND, I think it was, it just kind of, it kind of referenced like maybe there'll be development and maybe in the aesthetics part when it talks about visual resource impacts, but it didn't actually go in to look at what would happen in terms of like how this would work if it were fully developed. Like what would be the possibilities of loss of view or ways to mitigate that or protect those views. So all we're faced with is the project before us. Like we don't know anything, we don't have any other analysis. And so that's where I'm coming from. I'm basing it on like what I see. And, what I see is that a structure will go in that blocks the ocean view and it's along the town corridor, or excuse me, the scenic town boulevard. So that's where I'm challenged by this project as proposed.
Through the chair, do we have a view from the crown of the street? I mean, my view is I'm just kind of eyeballing it on Google Maps while we're in this meeting. Do we have a view from the crown of the street at the same angle? Because I think that if I get it right, the view you have is from somewhere near the Naomi Patridge Trail, or is that taken from the crown of the street, Scott?
And just to clarify, I took the photographs this morning on the edge of the roadway.
So you're close to the crown, but you're not quite at the crown, which is about, if I recall,
on the side of the roadway.
So it's about
on the western side of the roadway. So
it's not going to change. I mean, if I,
and I'm 6 feet tall, so.
Okay. So fair enough. You know, I'm swayed by Commissioner Benjamin and Commissioner Polgar's views. It's not a broad scenic view, but it is scenic corridor. And I think that policy is important. And I think that we need to think this through a little more carefully from a scenic corridor perspective, but agree, this is not a broad ocean view.
Chair Ruddick, if I could make a suggestion, I did just reviewed the plans again just to try and answer that question about form foundation versus slab in relation to the ADU. And I don't see that noted in the plans. That's something I may suggest just to ask the applicant for clarification on, to see if that may be an opportunity to reduce the height slightly and still retain the functionality. I do see that the main house has a form foundation, but I don't see that noted in the plans for the ADU. So.
Yeah, that would be worthwhile. Do you want to do that in real time? Get the applicant to explain?
If you feel comfortable with that, so.
Hello, Commission. Everybody could hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, to Commissioner Benjamin's request or comments, the garage is not on a raised footing. The garage is a slab, just like everybody's garage in their house. It's a concrete slab. And if you, I don't know if you guys, if everybody has the plans in front of them, but the finished floor elevation of the garage is at 40, elevation 40. And it is a slight downslope from the cul-de-sac. So the water has to drain from the front of the garage, around the ADU, to through the backyard to the drainage basin. And we have about 1% slope on that right now. The drainage basin is at elevation 38, 38, 38.
37.
38, 37. So roughly a little over a foot, 18 inches of slope in probably 150, 160 feet. That's about 1%. If we lowered the garage any further, we would create a hole, and there's no way we could drain water out of there. I don't know if everybody gets the drainage thing, but you can't build a house in a hole unless, if you do, you got to put a pump in it. And even if we put a pump, the field behind in Ewing Avenue and all that is in a hole, and you'd just be pumping in a circle. We have to be able to drain over elevation 38. I don't know if everybody gets those numbers or what I'm saying about that. Even though you have a detention basin, it could fill up and it has to have an overflow, and that has to overflow, and it has to drain. Everything is designed to drain to the south corner of the property, just like Ewing Avenue, Surf Beach, and the whole field, like I was talking earlier. Everything drains to the south. I mean, to the west. I'm sorry, southwest.
Is there going to be a crawl space there?
The ADU, I'm going to have to, I don't know if there's a crawl space to the ADU, but it's really not going to make a difference. The ADU is only 6 inches above the garage floor. So we can't have the ADU and the garage at the same height. So we would just, the corner of the ADU is at elevation 39.5. So it cannot go down any lower. We'll just be putting the house in a hole. And as a builder or a city or anybody, you do not build a house in a hole. So
well, thank you, Mr.
Hopefully that answered some of your questions.
It does. I have one. I'm looking at the plans. I'm trying to find in the plans something which maybe you know off the top of your head, but what's the height of the roof of the ADU and the garage?
The elevation?
The height from the floor to the top of the roof.
8 feet.
The inside or to the peak of the roof?
Yes, sir.
Okay, was
That
it?
was under 15 feet.
It was. It's like 14.9. It's 3 inches under 15 feet.
For both the ADU and the garage?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, they're the same ridge.
Okay.
Are you going to follow that through the chair?
No, I'm going to let you do that.
So the follow-on design objective, we are not trying to create a hole, or literally or figuratively speaking, for our applicant or for the city. We are trying at ocean view, and if we could get lower, that ocean view is impacted by the top of the roof, and if we could bring that down, then we would get we could mitigate that if it can come down. It seems like an attractive alternative. I will say I'm a little uncomfortable doing the engineering on the fly during the meeting. I don't want to put our staff in the position of having to say that, yep, that looks good, unless they're like really super confident.
No.
And I think that's a lot to ask. But, you know, I'm sympathetic. I'm not here to limit the applicant's footprint, but if the project can't respect the visual resource policy, maybe it has to be reined in. So I hope it can be resolved in the way it's to happen. And I want to take this moment to thank Rick for listening so carefully. And also thank you, Chair, for what I see are your piercing questions that suggest your sympathies as well.
Yes, well, you're
always am I on again?
Mr. Benjamin.
This is directed to Commissioner Benjamin. The engineering is not done on the fly. I don't know why you're saying that. We spent a lot of time and effort in the engineering.
A point of order, please. I believe that the applicant should be addressing their comments to the chair, and be clear that I'm not suggesting that there was some fly-by-night design here. Nothing like that at all. I'm sure the applicant's done a very careful job. It's that the revisions that we're talking about might need some additional consideration. So I apologize for any misunderstanding, and thank you for letting me state the point of order.
Yes, of course. No, I knew what you meant, but I could see how that could be misunderstood by folks not used to it.
Okay, Commissioner Ruddick, nothing was done on the fly. We spent a lot of time, effort, and money designing this project.
Everybody, I think you're continuing to misunderstand the expression of on the fly. What Commissioner Benjamin was communicating was a reluctance to, in this meeting tonight, to say something like, well, the height of the garage has got to change, and then to pass that without making sure that you and staff can work on that and come up with a winning solution to that. That's all he meant.
Through the chair, thank you for clarifying that with our applicant. We would suggest that if there are more questions for our applicant, maybe you queue them up now, and then we can let the applicant go back into the attendees, and you can focus on your deliberation. I do want to note from staff's perspective a couple things about the photographs and the discussion of lowering the height of the eastern wing of the building. Scott described where he took the pictures today. I was with him, and he was definitely on the shoulder of the road, and we are closer to the property in taking pictures there. And we might not be as high as the crown of the road. So we also intend to show the biggest impact And so that's what you have. We're not trying to hide anything. Those were the angles where the most obstruction would be found. You may see driving a little bit farther away, a few feet farther east, sitting in your car at whatever height you're at. You may have a little less view obstruction or maybe a little bit more. I am concerned about a condition applying to this that would be imposed without looking at it again, because it's hard for us to know how much it would need to be lowered to satisfy if you were making a policy decision about this. So I'm sorry about that. We want things to be ready for you, but that's the on the fly part that I believe that Commissioner Benjamin is referring to, and we agree that this is such a significant consideration that you're making that we don't want to just assume it's a foot or 2 feet. We don't know what it is.
Understood. Yes. Well, if there are no further questions for the applicant, the Vice Chair Polgar, yes?
Yes, through the chair. So one other question I had is that part of the reason why I understand, and I can see it in the pictures, that the 2-story residence is really not as an issue is because of its location, obviously, on the lot. Is there another thing, and I don't know, it may have already been explored, is shifting the proposed ADU and garage further north, north, or I guess, yeah, northeast on the proper parcel. Even a little bit may help a lot with the views. I don't know. And so this is not something I'm saying that should be done. I was just another thought about, because I get the sense that we're so close. And so that's just another thought about the potential solution.
Yeah, good question. Further deliberations?
Through the chair, just as a follow-up question to that. Okay. Scott, would it be possible for you to show the setbacks on the property from your original presentation? Because I think to Vice Chair Polgar's point, I think there may be some opportunity for improvement on the project. And I'm looking, the problem I have with the plans is they're not oriented north to south, they're kind of backwards. And so when I think about the view of this project and I'm looking at the impact from the visual resources perspective, I think the point that Commissioner Polgar or Vice Chair Polgar is making is if you scoot the project closer to the ADU and the garage closer to the street or the cul-de-sac, you may completely eliminate the impact to the visual resource. And it wouldn't require a variance, wouldn't require anything material from the commission. It's just changing the articulation of the angle.
Yes, absolutely. So what I've just screen shared is the plan set and drew in an arrow as what I think Commissioner Polgar mentioned was, possibly moving the garage and ADU further north, closer to the setback line.
Is the setback line the dotted line that you can, that's the setback?
Correct, the broken line here. So
yeah, again, I'm swayed by the arguments of my colleagues here that it's not a broad ocean view, but it is a scenic corridor and we have an obligation to protect it. And so if the applicant were willing to, address, this fundamental issue, and if we could look at the street views a little more comprehensively, I think we can I think we can address this. This is a design issue. It's from again, I'm a layperson, I'm not an architect, but it looks like a fairly simple design issue that could address the concerns that we have. There are other issues at stake when you look at the whole project and the architectural review process, but yeah, I think this is addressable.
That's an interesting notion, as Ms. Ekus was alluding to a minute ago. It's difficult for me to judge whether that would be sufficient movement of the ADU in the garage to make much of a difference in the obstruction as seen from Highway 1. And likewise, I couldn't sit here and guess how many feet lower the roof ridge line would have to be to satisfy a strict interpretation of the policy. Commissioner Benjamin, please.
Yeah, thank you. This is one of those places where I think we ought to employ management by objective. I'm glad that we're throwing in some ideas, and I hope that the applicant understands that we're generally supportive of the project and we're anxious to see it work. I think we've articulated what our concern is with respect to the need to maintain the ocean view, and I'm content to let them and staff work through this issue. I think it's really going to be a fabulous house, however it works out. It seems to me there are several degrees of freedom here, maybe with respect to the roof height, maybe with respect to the grade at which, the base grade of the project, maybe with respect to the design. I take my hat off to guys like Rick who can look at the design and see the potential there, or Commissioner Polgar. You guys are just really good at this. But I'd like to see the project come back after they've had a chance to show us how they're going to do it. And staff has the confidence that the proposal is going to achieve what we're asking for. How long would that?
Through the chair, we're trying to check with our applicant with regards to a continuance, for example. We would prefer for a project that is this well developed that we could continue to a date certain. Because we're in this format, it's much more difficult for us to communicate.
Would you like 5 or 10 minutes to do that offline?
Yeah, I thank you, Chair. I think this is worth another few minutes, so thank you.
Shall we come back? Vice Chair Polgar.
You're muted. Oops.
Through the chair, very, very simple. Just in one of the things I was going to make a comment on is that I think there might be an error in the landscape plan that shows that there'll be extensive decomposed granite happening outside of the parcel. And that'd be important just to correct that. That's all. It was when I first saw it, I was a little confused. I was like, wow, that's a lot of decomposed granite. So it's a minor thing, but just to clarify that they really don't mean to do that. I'm sure they don't, but I just wanted to.
Commissioner Benjamin, did you have something before we recess? Okay, let's come back at 8:55, please.
share that we just spoke with our applicant?
Yes, we had a quick phone conversation and went over some, design ideas as far as sliding the ADU and perhaps the garage forward. And our applicant is confident that they would be able to make the changes and in time for the October 26th Planning Commission hearing. So we would recommend a continuance to a date certain.
And just to add a little bit more with that, if it turns out they're not ready, we would agendize it and then request that you continue again. We would also note that the applicant has some other ideas for how to address this, and we would like to be able to explore all of the options with them, understanding the intent of the commission.
Good. And I take it from that you feel staff does understand the intent of the commission based on tonight's discussions. Good. Commissioner Benjamin?
Would you like a motion?
I just wanted to express a comment of through the chair, if I may.
Please, yes.
I'm super supportive of alternative design ideas. I mean, I will say, I really like this design. I think my feedback from ARC is that they really like this design. And so if we can figure out some interesting ideas that conform with what ARC and what we've seen before us are consistent with, I'm very supportive of creative ideas to get us where we need to be.
Well said. And with that, yes, I think a motion to continue would be welcome. Commissioner Benjamin.
Thank you. I move that we continue this project to a date certain, that being October 26th, with the intention that the project be modified to address the Commission's concerns with protecting the ocean views on this parcel, to address the concerns about decomposed granite as indicated on the plan that Vice Chair Polgar mentioned, that may not be what was intended. I would be happy to hear an amendment to the motion. It sounds like there may be others who want to add something.
I think the consensus is not around broad ocean views, but around scenic corridors.
Visual resource protection, I was going to say, just to be general. Sorry if
visual resource protection, I think, is the more appropriate versus, yeah.
Let my motion reflect that. And yeah, that's it.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you.
Oops. All right. We'll have a vote here. Commissioner Benjamin.
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Polgar.
Yes.
Chair Ruddick.
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
For the chair,
thank you, everybody.
The applicant's hand up again. Would we like to hear from them one more time?
I think better for the applicant to pursue next stages with staff as we just moved and voted on. So why don't we go to director's report next, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair and Commissioners, for working through this item. We really appreciate the thoughtfulness on your discussion. So your agenda forecast, you will see Brittany back in a couple weeks here for Poplar Gateway's notice of preparation scoping session for that environmental impact report. On October 26th, you already know one item that we're intending to bring to you. You just continued Pullman to a date certain. We're also hoping to have a study session ready for you about parklets on Main Street and in and around downtown. Staff has been working on how to affect some more permanent parklets following from the temporary work that has been allowed out in the right of way during these times where outside uses have been so important. So this is something a lot of other cities have worked on, and Scott is the point person for planning. He's also working with Joe Butcher, our community preservation specialist, who has been helping our downtown businesses with the temporary parklet installation. So they're really very hands-on with our businesses and making a lot of progress on this. So we're very interested in your input. They've made sure to keep the downtown business group involved. We know everyone really cares about how downtown is functioning, which is why we wanted to bring this to you as a study session before we have any kind of a hearing for a permit on this. Save the date, November 9th, your first meeting in November. We are going to have a study session with City Council on affordable housing. And that means that you're going to be invited to that. We'll either do it in a joint study session format, which is my preference, but we're still working through some logistics, but at a minimum, we'd really like you to attend. And council's been asking for a study session on affordable housing, and Brittany and I are preparing for that. We can talk a little bit more about it at your next meeting. We will send a placeholder for you. I hope you're all available. This may be an early meeting. Council likes to start study sessions earlier, and in addition to affordable housing, they would now like to also talk about Measure D. So it's kind of a two-part meeting that we feel needs several hours. A typical study session is a couple. We don't think we can cover all this material in 2 hours. So we're planning a format that would allow for a dinner break, and something that might start at like 5 or 6 o'clock. We'll pull you after through email just to see what works. But I see Vice Chair Polgar. Yeah.
Just through the chair, a clarifying question about the, you said November, what date are you looking at?
I said the wrong day. Brittany,
okay.
Save me.
No, you're right, the 9th?
No, I was right. Never mind.
Okay,
November
so
9th.
It's on a regular planning commission
yes,
date.
Okay. Yeah, that's your, it's extra work, but it's also not an extra meeting. The idea was to, if the planning commission is being brought into a council meeting, we wanted you to be able to do it on one of your regular nights when you hold time for this. And so yes, it's a standard planning commission night. It's an extra meeting for council. They requested a separate meeting from their regular council meetings. They want it to be focused on housing. So we're looking forward to this. Our focus will be on housing sites, and in particular, really highlighting things that were developed in the land use plan, and making a transition from the land use plan relative to council's priority around housing to firming up sites that we're going to include in the housing element. So it has a direct relationship to your work on policy documents. Okay, so that's about as
Just a quick note, that definitely works for me. I've blocked the calendar off. So I'm usually the person who has the weirdest schedule, but that definitely fits into my calendar.
Okay, good. We're glad to hear that. And thank you. I'm also happy to speak with each of you individually about what you think would be most helpful at this session. It's something that we don't just have a meeting like this to check a box. This is we want it to be productive. We want it to be helpful, obviously, to council and the planning commission, but you will hear from a lot of community members who have been addressing council and they have a lot of input, and we want to make sure that we give the right kind of information, enough information, and enough time for everyone to be able to share their thoughts on this. All right, City Council, we just went through a very active phase of ordinance items and also Measure D with City Council. So at their last meeting on September 21st, we had the second reading of the short-term rental ordinance went through. So we are now packaging up the short-term rental ordinance for submittal to the Coastal Commission, and we'll let you know when they get ready to see that. Our ADU ordinance has already been submitted to them, and it's also been submitted to the Department of Housing and Community Development. We don't know yet when that's slated for Coastal Commission review, and of course we'll let you know about that one as well. Also on the 21st, Council took action on Measure D transfers. They transferred 4 Measure D certificates from outside downtown to 2 sites that are in the town center, and they were all affordable units, and so that was a important meeting for that. If you're interested in the background materials, the staff report, in my opinion, is we think really helpful, and Brittany and I are both acknowledging ourselves on how much work we did on that. So anyway, we would encourage you to take a look at it, because that's good prep for the study session on Measure D, which would be part of that November 9th meeting. So we'll, Brittany, maybe you can remember to forward a link to that report to the commissioners tomorrow. So because I don't have anything to read this week, I keep you going. Okay. October 5th, the next City Council meeting, there will be a second study session on the electrification ordinance. Council had a study session on the 21st, and they used the full 2 hours, and they have more to discuss, and they wanted more information from staff, and I know that John Dowdy and Veronica are working hard to prepare that for them. So again, this session will be early. It will be at 5 p.m. on Zoom, and you are most welcome to pop into that and see where they are in that discussion. Architectural Advisory Committee met last week, and they saw the Main and Kelly project for, I think, the 3rd time. You had seen it. This commission saw it as a study session item. It was generally regarded as having made a lot of progress since you last saw it, and we are happy to say that we think we can, we're getting closer to bringing it to you for a hearing. So we keep moving forward there. Kind of the matters of interest to the commission outside of those arenas, Brittany's going to share some information about an upcoming housing session.
Yeah, so in addition to your November 9th joint study session with Council, we will be pulling together some more Half Moon Bay specific outreach meetings for our upcoming housing element update. And then tracking along with that, 21 Elements is putting on a series of meetings that address countywide housing issues. So this upcoming series is to help San Mateo County residents better understand our housing issues, including affordability and racial equity, climate change, and then a final series on how that all gets put together for better housing opportunities. So those are on October 13th. October 27th, November 10th, and December 1st. They are all Wednesdays at 6 p.m. on Zoom. And there's a little flyer. I can send that out to you with the Measure D staff report tomorrow.
And that is all we have, Chair. Thank you for giving us this time.
Well, thank you both very much. I'm always impressed by all the initiatives that staff is working so hard on, and oftentimes invisible to most of the residents of this fair city. But thank you for all that hard work. Commissioner Benjamin, unmute yourself, please.
Thank you. Echoing what you had just said, thank you, staff, for that work. In the conversation about housing, somewhere along the line, we probably ought to have some reference to the recent actions of the legislature and understanding what the ramifications are for our infrastructure planning. And I know you're thinking about that, but I thought I ought to just say it. I'm sure you're thinking about it.
Commissioner Hernandez.
And I want to be cautious about us over commenting on things, but same topic. I think the community is very concerned about affordable housing and housing for the homeless. And so I'm hoping that the topic that comes before us addresses both issues.
Thank you for that. Do commissioners have any communications you'd like to make at this point? Commissioner Hernandez?
I want to express my appreciation for two projects that impact my daily life. The first one is the improvements to the trail from Railroad to Poplar Beach. I see that work is well underway, and I extol the professionalism of the people who are executing that project, and it looks like they're doing all the right things the right way from a layperson's perspective. They're grading, they're digging out all the roots and knobs and bits and bobs, and it looks like we're going to have a really fine extension of the coastal trail from Railroad to Poplar. I also want to call out the temporary beach volleyball courts that have been installed at Kelly. As a parent of a beach volleyball player, the kids are saving an hour every day not having to put up their own beach volleyball courts when they go out and practice in their regular routine. And the courts look great. Everybody can use them. And I think I will express the sentiment of the beach volleyball community in saying, yay, we really like this activity from the city. We appreciate how quickly this has happened, and yay, yay, yay.
Well, that's a pretty cool upbeat note on which we may end. I have one thing to share, which is I will be absent from our next meeting, October 12. If all goes well, we will be up in the Sierra with no internet connectivity. Yes, indeed. For once in our lives. If there are no more communications, I'd welcome a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
I will second that motion with the proviso that whenever commissioners are absent in beautiful places, instead of a picture of them, we should have a beautiful place so we could all be slightly jealous.
There you go. There you go. Thank you for your second.
And I modify my motion to include Jimmy's recommendation that we have a picture of the beautiful place where people are at.
So noted. Shall we have a roll call?
Why not?
Again, it takes 3 people to cover for Bridget. I apologize. We're busy writing special things about your motion. Commissioner Benjamin.
Yes.
Commissioner Hernandez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Polgar.
Yes.
Chair Reddick.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank
night,
you,
everybody.
everybody. Everyone be well. Take care.